Let's pick up our conversation with Dave Rubin, host of the political talk show, The Rubin Report on YouTube. So I thought it would be interesting, Dave, to talk a little bit about, because you're increasingly not doing this on your show deliberately, as you talked about, in order to stay away from the sort of 24-hour news cycle. Generally speaking, we're 6 months into the Trump administration. How do you assess this presidency so far?
You know, I think it's unfortunately, it's become so polarizing, even talking about Trump, that making an assessment that's a clear, honest assessment, no matter how you do it, you're gonna get some hysterical stuff. But I'll do the best I can.
Yeah.
So first off, just to be clear, I did not vote for Trump. I voted for Gary Johnson, and I should be judged accordingly. I did videos on how to stop Trump. I talked to people that I admire at the highest levels, such as Sam Harris, on why you shouldn't vote for Trump and what his fears were about Trump. The week before the election, I had Hillary Rosen on, who is a progressive pundit and does tons of work with the DNC about why she hated Trump. Then I had plenty of Trump, not plenty of Trump people, but I had a couple Trump people on, including Scott Adams, who I think was the best public advocate for, if you wanted to vote for Trump, why to vote for Trump. Anyway, I did not vote for him. My feeling was, after the election, my feeling was that the fact that the chessboard, as I described before, has been thrown up and everyone's reevaluating things, versus that if Hillary had been elected, the screws that had about all the stuff that we talk about mainstream media and the corrupt politicians and all this stuff, those screws would have been tightened. It would have been really bad for independent media people. It would have been bad for just the slow degradation of society that we're seeing and discourse. All the screws would have been tightened against us. So Trump, although I did not support him, by throwing this chessboard up or driving the truck through it or whatever you want to use to describe it, I think that has created a net good in that right now there are more people talking about politics, reevaluating what they think, getting engaged, whether for him or against him, than I've certainly seen in my lifetime.
Okay, so let's pause there briefly, because you've just said a lot. I think you're about to get to the parts where we're going to disagree. But so far, you've said something I've been saying for a while, which is if Hillary Clinton had won, we would have seen significantly lower engagement in politics. You would have seen many on the left sort of say, hey, we've got a Democrat in the White House, so we can sort of tune out for 4 years, which would have led to a disaster in the 2018 midterms. And the reality is that as someone who is center to center right in Hillary Clinton, which I believe her to be, I think it actually would have not been particularly good for the left, which I consider myself to be a part on. So far, I agree with you. The Trump presidency and what I see as the endless scandals have really reinvigorated activism in an interesting way. Not exactly what you said, but I'm sort of agreeing with you here.
Yeah, and I think that's all legit. And also, you know, that fits within the things that I care about. The things that I care about are talking about the ideas, talking about the principles. Again, not necessarily every day-to-day decision or monitoring his Twitter so that I can start getting outraged, because now there's media companies that literally spend all day waiting for him to tweet so they can write about how outraged everyone is. So they're doing pre-outrage before people even have a chance for outrage. Now, as far as the actual presidency, I guess we should spend a minute on Russia first, just because that's what everybody seems to go to. Now, look, it seems to me that they haven't been able to pin anything directly. You know, a month ago, it was all the Comey stuff. That didn't seem to work out. 2 weeks ago, it was all the Trump Jr. stuff. That didn't seem to work out. This week, I guess there's some Manafort stuff. We'll see if that works out. If we were to go on the assumption for a second, I'll do it both ways for you. If we're going on the assumption that Trump did somehow collude with Russia, then what you're saying is that technically we should be at war with Russia right now, that you'd have to then depose Trump and, of course, Pence, and then I guess you then install the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan. Now, in a lot of ways, by doing that, you'd have a worse person for the Democrats, because Paul Ryan, by most estimations, especially economically, is certainly to the right of Trump, and maybe on some social stuff too.
Yeah, but Dave, let me. I don't want to interrupt you, but only because we've done the Russia stuff up and down. I'm more curious, like, for example, on the stuff Trump has actually done, like not whether he colluded with Russia, but is there like a particular policy or something Trump has done that you think is really good, and or what has he done that you think is really a disaster, if there's anything? Like, what do you see as the highs and lows of the 6 months?
Yeah, just give me 30 seconds on the Russia thing just to wrap that up, though, because my point is that if you're saying that there was collusion or they knew about all this, we are in effect at war. I mean, could there possibly be a bigger act of war than installing a president? So what you're saying is that if it would then be President Ryan, or we'd have to redo an election and get Hillary, I mean, the first thing we would have to do is go to war with Russia. I do not want to go to war with Russia. I don't think there's any reason to go to war with Russia.
But hypothetically, Dave, would you say going to war with Russia is so bad that we should allow an illegitimate president if it were determined to be such?
No, because I believe in evidence.
Good. Yeah.
No, I believe in evidence and logic and reason. So if one day, if tomorrow, literally, the second I hang up with you right now, if I go on Twitter and well, we figured it out. We actually got the trail. It's figured out Trump was installed, or the Russian government actually colluded to, and then we had to go ahead and do that. Well, then, of course, I don't want a Russian puppet. But all I'm saying is you need evidence.
Yeah.
And I think we have a lot more hysteria than evidence. Okay, so that's one thing.
Okay.
So as to your other question, the specifics of the policies. Look, when George W. Bush was president, I was against executive actions. When Obama was president, I was against executive actions. When Trump, who's now used a ton of them, I've been against them. We have 3 branches of government. We can do a little poli-sci 101. The legislative branch is supposed to write the laws. The executive branch signs them into law. That's the president. And then, of course, the Supreme Court or the court systems figure out if these laws are legal. The idea that we're doing so much through the executive branch, I think, is horrific for democracy and for the rule of law and for how this country is supposed to operate. So the fact that he is so willing to do that, and by the way, it shows you the limitations of this silliness. So when Obama did all this stuff with electronic pen or whatever he did, well, guess what? Because it didn't go through the legislative process, it all got reversed by Trump with the sign of that same pen. So I think the deferment of power, which, by the way, everyone's culpable in this. We the people are, but Congress, which doesn't pass laws anymore and doesn't have real debates and really figure out what they're trying to do. They're very good at investigating themselves and investigating other branches of government, but they don't seem to be able to pass laws and function the way that they're supposed to and be the representatives of the people that they're supposed to be. So that my main issue with him is that obviously Trump is a wild card in that I don't know what the Trump the political ethos is, other than it's for Trump. I get, there's this "Make America Great Again" or drain the swamp or all those things, but that to me is not a political ethos. I care about ideas. I want someone to come in and say these are the principles that I believe in, and this is how I'm going to try to govern. And I simply don't know what that is. I don't know what Trump's moral center is. If there was a real crisis, if there was a horrible terrorist attack, or if there was a missile crisis with North Korea or something, is Trump the level-headed person you want dealing with this? Now, you can probably, and his people would make an argument that he's put in people like Mattis that would do these things well, and he would defer to them. Okay, that's possible. But my biggest issue with him is that I just don't know what his political beliefs truly are, other than sort of the day-to-day machinations of playing the media and playing that fight. And I don't think that that's great for democracy.
But has he not done anything like his tax policy proposal, or what it is that he seemingly wants, although who really knows? It seems like he doesn't even, now it seems he confused health insurance with life insurance this entire time, but what he claims to want to do about health insurance or whatever. Is there any policy idea that he's put forth that you say, that's what I disagree with the most, it's a disaster?
Well, the tax stuff I don't particularly disagree with. This is as we started the interview, I said I've shifted a little right on taxes. I believe you have the right to keep as much as you earn, as much as you can as you earn. Now, I do believe we need to pay into the system to have roads and social services and things like that, which, by the way, there are some libertarians who don't. Mm-hmm. So I think this is something that you could couch in that classical liberal avenue. But lowering taxes as a general rule, I'm completely for.
Even if it's in a way, even if it's in a way that would be bad for the economy.
Well, you'd have to.
I guess what I mean, yeah, that's sort of vague. I mean, what I mean is, we have nothing we can point to that suggests sort of supply side stimulus by tax cuts for the very rich is good for the economy. We have periods where it's been done and it hasn't been acutely bad, but there's no evidence that it's good. So for me, I would say, okay, there's the question of what's ethical or moral, and there's also the question of the economic impact of it. That's sort of my background. So I would say it's hard for me to support something that would be economically damaging.
Well, I don't know that there's any direct evidence that it's economically damaging, but also we would have to whittle through, and we could do this in a week or so if you want. We'd have to whittle through exactly what the tax plan said. But again, as a general rule, I want you, David Pakman, as a small business owner, which you are with employees, to pay the least amount of taxes that you can so that you can hire more people, so that you can build a better studio, so that you can invest more in your operation and bring the goodness that is you and your operation out there. I know this as a small businessman now. If I had been being taxed higher right now, I had massive capital costs to build this studio and do all this stuff. By the way, I pay 100% of my employees' health insurance, 100%. I also give, my director gets a cut of our YouTube rev. I do all the things. I try to put my beliefs into practice.
But that's the confusion for me, Dave, because those capital expenses are tax deductible. So if the tax rate goes up for you as an individual, if you've got pass-through income, or for the business tax rate, it doesn't matter what the business tax rate is if you want to spend money on capital, because you don't pay taxes on that. Actually, it encourages you to spend money on capital to have a higher tax rate.
So I understand what that argument is, and I would argue at the same time as that, that having every one of us, however much you earn, it is your money. It is your money. We get taxed in all kinds of other ways with sales tax and everything else. I pay payroll tax and blah, blah, blah. And I would say the best way to, if you're on the left or you're a progressive and you hate Trump and you hate what this government has become, I don't think that the best answer is to topple the government and destroy this incredible experiment, which is what it is, this American experiment. I don't think the best way is to destroy it. I think the best way is to rein in the power that it has over us. And one of the ways you can do that is by giving it less money. I think that the government could function a lot slimmer and trimmer. I think actually you could probably get most progressives to admit that the government is a giant waste. But often they'll tell you how much they hate the government, and then the solution is more government or more taxes. I would say the only way to really control this stuff is to tighten the strings on the finances, and you have the right to keep as much as possible of what you earn.
Fair enough, and that's more of an ethical argument than an economic one. I think you would agree.
I would have to look at I suppose in this case, I'm making the ethical argument, which I think if things were more done on the grounds of ethics, than sort of staring at numbers and projecting things, and the CBO, which projects things for 20 years and is always wrong about everything, or all the pundits who project things are always wrong, and all the polls that are always wrong. I think doing some things based on ethical principles might actually have some more long-term positive benefits to society.
All right, let's pause there. We'll be back for our few remaining moments with Dave Rubin, host of the political show, The Rubin Report on YouTube. Back after this.